Well, it looks like we're gonna need a bigger hype train, because it turns out those cheeky developers at Arenanet deliberately sold Specialisation short to make it seem even more insane now, which it does. It turns out the way builds are created and decisions made will be drastically affected. Firstly, instead of spending 14 trait points, players will instead choose 3 trait lines, now known as core specializations, and will be able to pick 3 major traits from each line. This both reduces potential customization and increases it. Obviously, the 2 additional traits provide a considerable amount of extra options, but this comes at the cost of only being able to pick 3 trait lines. While few run the ultimate Celestial builds, there are a few possibilities that get killed off here, resulting in less net possibilities, although as suggested in the blog post, it's trimming and tidying rather than gutting the system with a machete. For the sake of clarity, I will now be referring to trait lines as specializations, as this is what they will become. Apparently, each trait will be more impactful and build defining, and although there are very few specifics given, by looking at the water magic example, it seems the way this will be achieved is by merging traits together and drastically improving some. This does result in a lower trait count per specialization due to some being removed, which is somewhat unfortunate, but this is almost certainly to make way for new ones added with what we all originally thought specializations were. Staves for rangers and hammers for engineers. These are known as elite specializations, which introduce new weapons, mechanics, skills and traits. Each elite specialization will typically unlock a single weapon type, a heal, 4 utilities and 1 elite. The aim seems to be creating themed builds, for example a full set of 6 shouts or a whole bunch of traps. These themes will be used to create greater synergy with runes, which is well deserved after the rune system was sadly deflated by bashing low tier bonuses. What I'm hoping for here is elite skills that actually matter. We already have the joy of Lich Form and Supply Crate, but we also have the utter monotony of Signet of Rage. Most elites are depressingly bland, hopelessly impractical, or devastating with massive cooldowns. Without putting on the rose-tinted glasses too much, Guild Wars 2 should learn a little from its predecessors' elite skills, and make elites less of a mandatory choice and at least slightly more important in the thought process of creating a build. But that's not all. Elite specializations will affect profession mechanics. For example, a new way to shatter illusions or other usages for life force. It's difficult to comment on this due to the lack of details, but ironically this seems to suggest that specializations may actually make professions more versatile. Elite specializations will use up one of the 3 choices available, and although currently only one will be usable at once, the wording suggests that nothing is off the table, trademark. An elite specialization will come with its own complete set of 3 minor traits and a host of major traits, some of which seem to be extremely powerful. For example, granting your character a break bar or removing a condition after every evade. You might think that is all that could possibly be happening, but you would be incorrect. Because some traits are being disposed of, certain skills will have the power of these traits by default. For example, Necromancer Whirls will all be ground targeted, and all current skills will have a category assigned to them if they don't have one. This will make utilities and weapons more bendy and flexible, while increasing synergy with the remaining traits and rune sets. There is little to comment on this, seeing as there is literally no downside to this. But it's worth pointing out that the Engineer's Mortar Elite will become a kit, a sure sign that Arenanet have decided to move in the correct direction with regards to elites. However, even that isn't enough. Professions will become even more malleable than all of that. Specializations will not be tied to stats. To compensate for this, some numbers will migrate and latch onto gear, so there'll be more or less no difference at all. Base stats are also increasing to 1000 to further compensate. Interestingly, this will end up as a direct improvement to damage output, as you will no longer be restricted to specializations with stats appropriate for the goal of the build. Due to profession-specific stats not being found on gear, all characters will have half of the maximum profession-specific stat by default, and picking the relevant core specialization will increase it to its maximum value. For example, Elementalist attunements will recharge in 10 seconds by default, but specializing in Arcana will reduce this to 8.7 seconds. Finally, in more ways than one, the method by which skills and traits are unlocked is being fixed. Transitioning into a new system. Skill challenges and leveling up will serve a brand new function, granting hero points, which will be spent on profession reward tracks. There are 3 kinds of reward tracks. Core Specialization reward tracks, which unlock all the traits from a core specialization, Elite Specialization reward tracks, which is exactly the same except for Elite Specializations rather than Core Specializations, and Core Skilled reward tracks, which unlock a specific type of skill, for example signets or glyphs. Elite Specialization reward tracks have the added benefit of rewarding unique themed skins along with new runes and sigils. How many hero points are needed to unlock things is currently undetermined, but purely leveling will grant enough to unlock a few builds, and a fair amount of hero challenges will be enough to unlock everything. Honestly, this is almost as good as the original system, and will allow players to shape their skill and trait path much more easily, without having to run around all over the place or spend copious amounts of currency. Sadly, this does mean our beloved blue chevrons are on their way out. Leftover skill points will magically transmute into Mystic Forge materials, which is precisely a lot better than just getting rid of them. If all that isn't enough to turbocharge the hype train, then I don't know what is. If you want to ask some questions, ask me and I'll make up an answer. But if you want actual answers, post them on the forum question thread and watch as they get answered live on Twitch tomorrow at 12 noon Pacific time.